Good morning. Well, morning for me. So, I want to talk about, I'm going to talk to you while I do two things at once to take advantage of this time while I'm alone. So, I mentioned that a lot of my work or my focus revolves around sacred geometry, the time of birth, the day of birth, and that's the sacred geometry. The universe is made of this universal sacred geometry, and then pinpointed at that moment where you emerged is the configuration of the planets at that exact moment, and the conversation that they're having, the influences that they're having on each other. Ultimately, we express that dynamic conversation. And a dynamic conversation is not flat, it's not straightforward, it's not one way, it's very multi-dimensional. You can look at it from many different angles, and it can evolve based on your perception, based on your attention. So I asked my neighbor recently, how she feels about the word God, because we were doing some chanting and that word kept coming up, and I was feeling resistance in myself. I realized I wasn't participating fully because of that. So I wasn't building the energy the way I had experienced before. And she said, yeah, I love the word God. It means geometry of the divine. And I was like, what? Of course. So that God is that big, universal sacred geometry of the divine. And then when we say we're finding the divine within, or the divine self, it's appreciating that piece that we are, that moment of our birth, our personal sacred geometry. Okay? So that's a big part of everything that I'll probably ever talk to you about. And then this morning, practicing with Kundalini Live, I'm not going to say his name properly because I've just started with them, so I'll tell you his name another time. But Kundalini Live, the instructor says we regenerate the energy, G. So that's our practice. And then we organize that energy, O. That's our attention, where our focus is. And then D, it dissolves. Was that the D that he used? I think it creates the same effect. It dissipates. Dissipates is the word that he used for D. So G-O-D, regenerate, organize, and then it dissipates. So we take action, and we direct our energy with our focus. We organize it, and then it dissipates. We rest. And that is a cycle. Just wanted to make this little video because I love this feeling of connectivity, of aha, yes, everything makes sense. And of course, because everything is in cycle, I will, in using it in my own relationship with myself and in my work, of course, encounter confusion about what does it mean and how do I incorporate it, and all this thinking. And then we come back to the simple nature that everything exists in a spectrum and in a cycle. So why am I bringing that up? The spectrum is the duality, that we're living in this duality human experience. And that is what challenges us. It takes us out of our awareness of this God self, of and because it's two oppositely natured things, subjects, or personality traits, or personality and purpose, and they clash. There's tension there. So when we focus, when we have energy and we focus on looking at our sacred geometry from some angle, any angle, we're going to find these tensions that then we have to find this middle ground for. And what's going to be super useful and maybe even absolutely necessary to find that middle ground is conscious practice, is using that cycle of the regenerating, building energy, and that's a taking of action, focusing it. We have a choice. We have this incredibly flexible perspective when we are present, and then also resting. So I hope that's making a bit of sense, at least, of how it all ties together, and we'll spend time together exploring that. I'm excited.